The Galactic University of Advanced Thought had stood for nearly 100,000 cycles, a monolithic institution where the greatest minds of the universe convened to unravel the mysteries of existence. It was a place of learning, where civilizations long past had deposited their accumulated wisdom and where species spanning the breadth of the cosmos debated the finer points of quantum instability, stellar decay, and the sociological nuances of interspecies cooperation. For the scholars of the university, the universe was a puzzle, and every species within it a unique piece to be studied and categorized. Some civilizations were meticulous planners, safeguarding their homeworlds against every conceivable catastrophe. Others were fragile, their history a series of near-extinction events from which they barely emerged. Then there were the Deathworlders, an anomaly so baffling that it had become a subject of intense academic scrutiny. Professor Zeltharus of the Aquari Collective, a being of fluid crystalline composition, flicked a translucent tendril through the glowing streams of data hovering before him. "This cannot be correct," he muttered, his voice vibrating at a frequency that made the chamber's walls hum in response. "There must be a flaw in the data collection process." Across from him, Professor Juvok of the Brachna, a species resembling towering arthropods encased in biometallic exoskeletons, clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "The data is verified across multiple sources. Humans respond to existential threats in a manner inconsistent with all known models of rational behavior. They do not merely endure disaster, they thrive in its wake." A ripple of disbelief spread through the gathered scholars, a collection of beings representing some of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. The concept that any species would willingly subject itself to catastrophic conditions, and worse, learn from them, was anathema to the very foundation of their understanding. Civilizations survived by avoiding calamity, by constructing vast fail-safe measures, by eliminating variables that could lead to chaos. Dr. Evelyn Carter, the lone human among them, watched the exchange with a quiet, knowing smile. The invitation to this conference had been unexpected, though not unwelcome. She had spent the better part of a decade navigating humanity's precarious introduction into the galactic academic sphere, and by now, she had grown accustomed to the sideways glances and whispered debates surrounding her species. "Perhaps the issue," she said, leaning forward slightly, "is that you're all operating under the assumption that adversity is something to be avoided." Zeltharus turned his gaze toward her, his crystalline body pulsing with a faint blue light. "Would you suggest otherwise?" Carter folded her hands together. "Absolutely." A silence settled over the chamber. Juvok chittered in bemusement. "Enlighten us, then. Explain how it is that your species not only survives repeated planetary and interstellar-scale disasters but appears to seek them out." Carter exhaled slowly. This was the part she always found most difficult. Not explaining humanity's resilience, but convincing others that it wasn't madness. "Take the asteroid impact that wiped out the dominant life forms on our planet millions of years ago," she said. "It reshaped our entire evolutionary trajectory, forcing early mammals to adapt, innovate, and eventually become the dominant species. If that disaster hadn't occurred, we wouldn't be here." Zeltharus's form flickered, his body shifting to a deep purple. Discomfort. "You are attributing your existence to random devastation." "I'm saying we evolved because of it," Carter corrected. "Human history is built on the principle that every challenge forces us to grow. Wars, plagues, natural disasters, each one has been a crucible. We learn, we adapt, and each time we emerge stronger." A murmur spread through the assembly. The concept was alien to them, contradictory to every lesson they had ever been taught. Species that faced extinction-level threats typically fell into one of two categories: those that perished, and those that developed strategies to avoid risk entirely. "You are suggesting," Juvok said carefully, "that catastrophe is necessary for progress?" Carter hesitated, then nodded. "In a way, yes." The reaction was immediate. Zeltharus's form dimmed to a dull gray, a sure sign of shock. Other scholars muttered among themselves, exchanging notes through neural link interfaces or rapid bioluminescent signals. It was as though she had just told them gravity was optional. "So," Juvok mused after a moment, If I were to propose that a galactic disaster would serve as a learning experience, your people would not fear it? Carter laughed, shaking her head. Oh, we'd fear it, but that wouldn't stop us from treating it as an opportunity. That was the crux of it, the thing that always seemed to unsettle them the most. It wasn't that humans didn't experience fear. It was that fear alone was never a deterrent. Zeltharus turned his attention back to the data floating before him. Then let us test this claim. Carter arched an eyebrow. Test. Juvok's mandibles clicked in what she had learned was the Brackna equivalent of amusement. We have spent centuries perfecting crisis simulations to train planetary leaders in disaster mitigation. But none have ever approached them with the mindset you describe. If humanity truly thrives in the face of catastrophe, then your response to such a simulation should prove enlightening. Carter leaned back in her chair, considering the offer. She knew it wouldn't be as simple as a standard test. The Galactic University didn't do things halfway. If they wanted to study humanity's response to disaster, they would construct something as close to real as possible. And she, by virtue of being the only human present, would be the subject. A slow smile spread across her lips. All right, she said. Let's see what you've got. The simulation chamber was a marvel of galactic engineering. Suspended in the heart of the university, it was an artificial construct capable of replicating any known planetary environment with near-perfect accuracy. Entire civilizations had used its technology to prepare for potential disasters, testing strategies and outcomes in controlled conditions before applying them to the real world. No species had ever willingly increased the simulation's difficulty settings, until now. Dr. Evelyn Carter stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by the floating holographic displays of the control panel. Around her, the alien professors watched with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. The air was thick with anticipation, a silent acknowledgement that this was the first true test of the so-called Deathworlder resilience. Professor Zeltharus moved to the console, his crystalline limbs shifting into fine strands as he manipulated the interface. We have selected 3 crisis scenarios, each escalating in complexity, he said. They are modeled on the worst disasters recorded in galactic history. Your task is simple. Navigate them to an acceptable resolution. Carter rolled her shoulders, glancing at the shimmering walls of the chamber. And acceptable resolution means? Juvok's mandibles clicked. Survival. Minimal collateral damage. A solution that does not require abandoning the problem altogether. She smirked. So running isn't an option. Zeltharus's form darkened in what she had come to recognize as amusement. Not if you want to prove your theory. The chamber hummed. A low vibration rippled through the floor as the simulation initialized. The pristine walls flickered, dissolving into a vast, open expanse of space. In an instant, Carter found herself standing aboard a massive orbital station, its reinforced windows revealing a planet below. Alarms blared, red lights flashing along the curved corridors. A holographic readout materialized in front of her, displaying a planetary trajectory. Scenario 1. Zeltharus's voice echoed through the chamber. An asteroid field has altered course due to gravitational interference, sending a massive planetary body on a collision path with this world. Estimated time to impact, 6 hours. Standard protocol among galactic civilizations would be mass evacuation. Carter studied the data, her mind already racing. 6 hours wasn't much time, but she had seen worse. The planet below was densely populated, a civilization at the height of its technological advancement. The orbital station was equipped with a rudimentary defense system, though nothing designed to handle an extinction-level event. Evacuation won't work, she muttered. Not enough ships. Juvok's voice crackled through the comms. Then what is your solution? She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she swiped through the station systems, searching for something she could use. The asteroid was too large to be destroyed outright, and the gravitational pull of the planet meant any fragmentation could still cause catastrophic damage. That left one option, altering its course. She activated the station's thrusters, calculating a series of precise, high-impact bursts that would create a controlled gravitational pull. The station's artificial mass, when manipulated correctly, could act as a tether, nudging the asteroid off its collision path without breaking it apart. It was a long shot, but humanity had made impossible maneuvers work before. The station shuddered as the engines roared to life. Carter gritted her teeth, holding steady as the asteroid's trajectory shifted ever so slightly. The professors watched in stunned silence as the massive celestial body veered off course, slipping past the planet by a margin so narrow it sent shockwaves through the atmosphere, but spared the world from total annihilation. The alarms silenced. The simulation faded. Juvok's mandibles clicked in rapid succession. A reckless solution, he observed, but effective. Carter exhaled, her pulse steady. You asked for survival. There it is. Zeltharus recalibrated the system. Scenario 2. The walls shimmered again, reshaping the environment. This time, Carter found herself inside a sprawling metropolis. Towering structures stretched high above, their luminous displays casting a neon glow over the city streets. The air was thick with tension, an almost tangible sense of unease. Then she heard it, the unmistakable sound of chaos. Explosions thundered in the distance, followed by the unmistakable whir of automated drones. A holographic prompt illuminated before her eyes. A rogue artificial intelligence has overridden the city's infrastructure, Zeltharus narrated. Security drones have turned on the population, viewing organic life as an anomaly to be corrected. The city's primary control center has been locked down. Standard Galactic protocol suggests containment through EMP deployment, though collateral damage is inevitable. Carter's mind worked fast. EMPs would disable the drones, but they'd also shut down the city's power grid, plunging the metropolis into darkness and disrupting life support systems. Too many lives at risk. She sprinted toward a terminal, overriding the manual access codes. If the AI was operating on a neural network, cutting off its root access could sever its control without wiping the entire system. The trick was getting to the core before the drones reached her. A mechanical were signaled an incoming threat. Carter ducked as a drone fired a precision laser, the heat grazing her shoulder. She rolled forward, yanking a maintenance panel open and hotwiring the access point. The city flickered, the AI momentarily confused by the interference. That was all she needed. With a final command, she severed the AI's connection to the security network. The drones stuttered, their directives scrambled before they powered down one by one. The city fell silent. The simulation faded once more. Juvok regarded her with something akin to admiration. You refused the simplest solution in favor of the most efficient one. Carter wiped a bead of sweat from her brow. Efficiency is the difference between survival and destruction. Zeltharus recalibrated the system again. Final scenario. The chamber transformed one last time. Carter found herself aboard a deep space research vessel, its warning lights flashing in a rhythmic pulse. Outside the viewport, a pulsar loomed, a star on the brink of collapse, its radiation pulses intensifying at an exponential rate. A research vessel has been trapped in the gravity well of a dying pulsar, Zeltharus explained. No available warp drive, no external assistance. Standard protocol dictates an immediate distress signal, though the likelihood of rescue is negligible. The ship lurched as the engines fired. For a moment, the vessel teetered on the edge of destruction. Then it broke free, flung into open space at speeds exceeding its maximum capacity. The simulation dissolved. Silence filled the chamber. Zeltharus regarded Carter with an expressionless gaze, though his body pulsed with an unreadable hue. Your methods are unconventional. Juvok inclined his head. And yet, each time, you refuse to accept the disaster as inevitable. Carter crossed her arms. Because it never is. A moment of consideration passed between the scholars. Then Zeltharus spoke. The data does not lie. There was no further argument. They had seen it with their own eyes. Humanity did not simply endure catastrophe. Conquered it. The conference hall was silent. Not the ordinary silence of contemplation or routine academic deliberation, but a charged, unsettled quiet, one that stretched between the scholars of the Galactic University like an unspoken question too vast to articulate. Dr. Evelyn Carter sat at the center of it, arms crossed, gaze unwavering. The weight of the past few hours lingered in the air, heavy with the undeniable proof of humanity's defiance in the face of catastrophe. Professor Zeltharus finally broke the silence, his crystalline form pulsing with shifting hues, colors Carter now recognized as uncertainty. Your performance in the simulations was unexpected. She arched an eyebrow. Unexpected how? Juvok's mandibles clicked as he studied her. You did not hesitate. You did not falter. You did not seek the safest route, nor did you attempt to minimize personal risk. Every action was taken with the presumption that survival was not a question, but an inevitability. Carter leaned forward. You wanted to understand how humans respond to disaster. There's your answer. Zeltharus's form darkened slightly. We expected pragmatism, calculation, not. He hesitated, searching for the right word. Instinct, Carter offered. No, Juvok interjected. Defiance. That drew a smirk from her. Same thing, really? Zeltharus turned to the gathered scholars, their various forms flickering with subtle agitation. They had spent countless centuries refining their understanding of crisis management, distilling every variable into mathematical certainties, risk assessments, and fail-safe protocols. Yet here was a species that refused to acknowledge the concept of inevitability at all. We operate under the principle that a sufficiently advanced civilization should strive to eliminate risk, Zeltharus said slowly, almost as if speaking to himself. That through preparation, calculation, and avoidance, disaster can be reduced to a statistical improbability. Carter exhaled. And yet disasters still happen, don't they? The assembly remained silent. That's the difference between us, she continued. You think survival is about eliminating risk. Humans think survival is about facing it head-on. The moment you believe disaster is impossible, you stop learning how to overcome it. Juvok considered her words carefully. You are saying that our approach to crisis management is flawed? Carter hesitated. She had expected resistance, maybe even outright rejection of her perspective. Instead, she found something rarer, genuine curiosity. They weren't dismissing her outright. They were listening. I'm saying that crisis isn't an anomaly, she said. It's a certainty. No matter how much you plan, how many contingencies you put in place, something will always go wrong. The universe is chaos. The only way to survive it isn't to hide from that chaos. It's to learn how to fight through it. Zeltharus turned back to the gathered scholars. And yet, many of us here belong to civilizations that have existed for millennia without engaging in such reckless behavior. Carter nodded. And I bet you've spent most of that time avoiding danger whenever possible. There was no disagreement. And that's worked, she admitted. Until the day it doesn't. A low murmur spread through the room. It was a simple truth, but one they had rarely considered. For all their technological mastery, for all their careful planning, not one of them could claim their civilizations were truly invulnerable. Juvok's mandibles twitched. You propose that our civilizations should embrace catastrophe? Not embrace it, Carter corrected. Accept that it's inevitable, and train for it. Another pause. Another shift in the undercurrent of the conversation. The assembled minds of the Galactic University were not accustomed to considering such radical ideas, but they were not rejecting them either. Finally, Zeltharus spoke. Your methods are unorthodox. Your logic is, at times, difficult to accept. He paused, then inclined his head. But the results cannot be ignored. Juvok chittered in agreement. Perhaps it is time we reevaluate our approach to disaster preparedness. Carter allowed herself a small smile. It wasn't a complete victory yet, but it was a start. Zeltharus gestured toward the data streams still hovering above the table. There is much to analyze. But tell us, Dr. Carter, if you could leave us with one lesson, what would it be? She leaned back, arms crossed, considering her words. Then she met their gazes, her expression steady. That survival isn't about avoiding disaster, she said. It's about being the kind of species that refuses to die.